Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story comes from a place a lot of us can understand, even if we don't want to admit it. It's about that moment when loneliness makes you stupid, when grief opens a door you should have kept locked, and when someone walks through that door knowing exactly what they're doing while you're still pretending it's fate. This is Marcus's story. 28 years old, software developer from Vancouver, the kind of guy who had his life together on paper, but felt like he was drowning in all that rain and routine. He thought he'd found something real in Bangkok's neon chaos. Thought he'd met someone who saw him, not his wallet. By the time he realized the difference, he was $40,000 lighter, and sitting in a police station trying to explain how a smart guy could be so incredibly dumb. But here's the thing about Marcus's story. It's not really about being dumb. It's about being human, about what happens when you're vulnerable and someone with experience spots it from across a crowded bar. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever ignored a red flag because you wanted something to be true so badly, hit that like button. You're not alone. Trust me. Now let's hear from Marcus himself. This came to us in a long email, written, I think, as much for him as for anyone else. Here's how it started. I need to tell you about my life before Thailand, because otherwise, none of this makes sense. I don't want you thinking I was some desperate loser or sex tourist. I had a good job. I had friends, sort of. I had a condo in Yaletown that I split with a roommate who worked in finance and was never home. On paper, I was doing fine. But my dad died in March. Lung cancer, never smoked a day in his life, just bad luck and bad genes. I watched him disappear over 6 months. This man who taught me to code when I was 12, who believed I'd build something that mattered. By the end, he was just skin and confusion, didn't know my name, couldn't remember what year it was. When he finally went, I felt relieved. Then I felt guilty about feeling relieved. Then I just felt nothing. Work kept going, stand-ups at 9, code reviews at 11, deployment on Fridays. I was building features for an app that helped people optimize their grocery shopping. Important stuff, right? World-changing. My manager kept asking if I needed time off, but I said no, because what would I do with time off? Sit in my apartment and think. No thanks. Vancouver that summer felt like it was mocking me. All these beautiful people on patios, couples walking the seawall, everyone seeming to have cracked some code I'd never gotten. I tried the dating apps, but every conversation felt like a job interview. What do you do? Where did you go to school? What neighborhood do you live in? Like we were all just checking boxes, making sure the other person's life looked good enough to screenshot. I was lonely. Not the kind where you notice it every day, but the kind that builds up like plaque. Until one day you realize you haven't had a real conversation in weeks. My closest friend had moved to Toronto. My sister was busy with her own life. I'd come home from work and scroll through Instagram looking at strangers having better times than me, then feel pathetic for caring. That's when the algorithm started serving me these videos. Digital nomads in Chiang Mai working from cafes, expat vloggers in Bangkok talking about how far money goes, how warm people are, how you can just start over. And yeah, some of those videos featured the nightlife, the bars, the women. I'm not going to lie and say that wasn't part of the appeal, but it was more than that. It was the idea of escape, of going somewhere I had no history, no one knew about my dad, or my mediocre career, or my student loans, or any of it. Somewhere the weather didn't feel like a personal insult and people smiled at strangers. I bought a ticket in August. 2 weeks, I told myself. Just to reset. Clear my head. Maybe I'd come back ready to actually live my life instead of just maintaining it. I had no idea I was buying a one-way ticket to the most expensive lesson of my life. Bangkok hit me like a physical thing. I landed at Suvarnabhumi at 11 at night, and the humidity wrapped around me the second I stepped outside. It smelled like exhaust and something sweet I couldn't identify impossibility. My hotel was in Sukhumvit, one of those budget places that tries to look modern in the photos, but has stains on the ceiling and a shower that's just a nozzle over the toilet. I didn't care. I dropped my bag and walked. Even at midnight, the city was alive. Street carts selling things I couldn't identify. Tuk-tuks weaving through traffic, music spilling out of open doorways. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere, doing something, part of something. In Vancouver, I felt invisible. Here, as the only white guy on some backstory, I felt seen. Overwhelmed, out of place, but seen. I spent the first few days doing tourist things, temples, markets, that giant mall with the aquarium inside, But I was alone, taking selfies with no one to send them to, eating meals while watching other travelers laugh in groups. The loneliness followed me across the Pacific. On day 4, a British guy at my hostel asked if I wanted to check out the nightlife. I said sure, expecting something like Granville Street back home. He took me to Nana Plaza. I don't know how to describe Nana if you've never been there. It's this open-air complex, 3 stories of bars wrapped around a central courtyard, music bleeding into music, lights everywhere, and women. So many women. Standing outside bars in matching outfits, calling out to guys walking past, dancing on stages visible through open doorways. I felt like I'd walked onto a movie set. Part of me wanted to leave immediately. The other part, the lonely part, was curious. We went into a place on the 2nd floor. Go bar, my friend called it. Women dancing on a stage in bikinis and heels, numbers pinned to their tops. Men at tables, buying drinks, watching. The whole thing felt surreal and sad and exciting all at once. A woman sat down next to me without asking. Started touching my arm, asking where I was from, telling me I was handsome. It felt transactional and obvious, and I wasn't interested. I was about to make an excuse to leave when I saw her. She was at the end of the bar, not dancing, just sitting and looking at her phone. Smaller than the other women, hair pulled back, no makeup that I could see. She looked bored, or tired, or both. When she glanced up and caught me staring, she didn't smile that automatic smile the others did. She just looked at me for a second, curious, then went back to her phone. That's what got me. The disinterest. The fact that she wasn't performing, I don't know what made me walk over. Dutch courage from my 2nd beer, maybe. Or just the sense that if I didn't do something, anything, I'd go home having not connected with a single person. I asked if I could buy her a drink. She looked at me like she was deciding whether I was worth the effort, then shrugged. Sure. Her name was Proy. She was 26. Her English was pretty good, better than my Thai, which was non-existent. We talked about nothing at first. Where I was from, how long I was visiting, whether I liked Thai food, normal stuff. But she asked follow-up questions. Seemed actually interested when I talked about my work, about coding, even though she admitted she didn't really understand computers. When I mentioned my dad, just in passing, something about why I needed to travel, her whole face changed. She put her hand on mine and said she was sorry, not in the automatic way people do, but like she meant it. We talked for 2 hours. The bar got busier, louder, but we stayed in our bubble. She told me about growing up in Isan, the northeastern part of Thailand. About her grandmother raising her after her parents split. About her younger brother who was smart, smarter than her, she said, who she was trying to keep in school. She worked at the bar, she said, because teaching jobs paid nothing. Maybe 10,000 baht a month. Not enough to live on and support her family. She didn't love it, but she didn't complain either. Just stated it as fact, the same way you talk about weather. Around midnight, she asked if I was hungry. There was a good street food place nearby, she said. Quiet. Away from all the noise. We walked through back alleys I'd never have found on my own, past shuttered shops and stray dogs, until we hit a cart with plastic stools set up on the sidewalk. She ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. Pad krapao with fried egg. It was the best thing I'd eaten in Thailand, maybe anywhere. We sat there until almost 3 in the morning. She asked about my dad, really asked, and when I started talking about those last few weeks in the hospital, about how guilty I felt for wanting it to be over, my eyes got wet. I tried to play it off, but she didn't let me. She just sat there, her hand on my arm, letting me feel it. When she finally said she needed to go home, I asked if I could see her again. She hesitated, and in that hesitation I felt my stomach drop. Then she smiled, a real smile, and said, "Okay, tomorrow. Same place, 7 o'clock. I floated back to my hotel, didn't sleep, just lay there replaying every part of the conversation, convincing myself this was different, she was different, we'd actually connected. The next night, she showed up in jeans and a t-shirt instead of her work clothes. We got dinner, walked along the river, talked about everything and nothing. She was funny, self-deprecating, smart in ways that had nothing to do with school. When I made her laugh, really laugh, I felt like I'd won something. By the end of my 2 weeks, I'd barely seen any of Bangkok, except the parts that involved her. We'd fall into this routine. I'd meet her after her shift. We'd get food, we'd walk and talk until the sky started getting light. She never asked me for anything, never mentioned money, just seemed to enjoy my company. On my last scheduled night in Thailand, we were sitting by the Chao Phraya watching boats go past, and she got quiet. I asked what was wrong. She said she'd miss me, that it was nice having someone to talk to who wasn't a customer, who saw her as a person. I told her I'd miss her too. And then, without planning it, I said, what if I didn't leave? What if I stayed? She looked at me like I was crazy. Your job, she said, your life. I can work remotely, I told her. I can do my job from anywhere. And my life back home isn't much of a life. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she asked if I was sure, if I really meant it. I'd never been more sure of anything. Within a week, I'd quit my job, or rather negotiated a contract position that let me work my own hours. I found us a small apartment in On Nut, a neighborhood I'd never heard of, but that Ploy said was more real than the tourist areas. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, windows that looked out at a concrete wall, but it was ours. Ploy quit the bar. That was the deal, I said. If we're doing this, really doing this. I didn't want her working there anymore. She agreed so easily, it should have been my first clue, but I was too happy to notice. We played house. She'd cook simple meals while I worked at the little desk we'd bought from a second-hand shop. We'd take the BTS to random stops just to explore. We'd lie in bed with the fan rattling and talk about the future. About maybe opening a small cafe together someday. About visiting Canada when we'd saved up enough. She met my sister on video chat and was nervous and charming. My sister texted me after saying she seemed sweet, but to be careful. I told her she was being paranoid. I thought I was living the life I'd seen in those YouTube videos. The digital nomad dream. Love in a foreign country. The kind of story I could tell people back home to prove I wasn't just going through the motions anymore. I thought I was the one writing the story. I had no idea. I was just another chapter in hers. Looking back now, I can see exactly when things shifted, but at the time it felt so gradual I didn't notice. That's how it works, right? You don't wake up one day and realize you're being scammed. It happens in tiny increments, small compromises, little moments where you choose to believe instead of question. We'd been living together for about 2 months when Ploy's grandmother got sick. At least that's what she told me. She came home from the market one afternoon with red eyes, said her aunt had called, that her grandmother had fallen and broken her hip and needed surgery. How much? I asked. She hesitated. Said she shouldn't ask me, that it was her family's problem. But when I pressed, she said 40,000 baht, about 1,500 Canadian dollars. I transferred it that same day, told her family was important, that of course I'd help. The relief on her face felt real. She cried and held me and said I was the best man she'd ever known. 2 weeks later, it was her brother. School fees were due, and her aunt couldn't cover them this semester. 20,000 baht, I sent it. Then the water buffalo died, which I didn't even know her family had a water buffalo, but apparently it was crucial for farming and they needed a new one. 30,000 baht. Each time, Ploy seemed reluctant to ask. Each time, I felt good about helping. This was what you did for people you loved, right? You showed up. You provided. My dad had always been that way, taking care of people, and I liked the idea of being that kind of man. But the requests started coming more frequently. 5,000 baht here for medicine. 10,000 there for a roof repair. Her cousin needed help with a business loan. Another cousin was getting married, and tradition required the family to contribute. The numbers started blurring together. I checked my savings one night after Ploy had gone to sleep. I'd arrived in Thailand with about 60,000 Canadian in my account, money I'd saved over years of living cheap in Vancouver. I was down to 32,000 in 4 months. I felt sick. Then I felt guilty for feeling sick. This was my girlfriend's family. These were emergencies. What kind of person keeps score? But other things were starting to bother me too. Small things that I kept pushing down. Ploy's phone was always face down on the table. Always. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd quickly close whatever she was looking at. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say friends, her aunt, nobody important. Why was I being jealous? She started going out more. Girls' nights, she called them. Friends from her village who were also working in Bangkok. She'd leave around 9 and come home at 3 or 4 in the morning smelling like cigarettes and whiskey, her makeup smeared, her eyes glassy. Where did you go? I'd ask. Just a club. Just dancing. Why don't you trust me? And that became the pattern. Any time I asked a question, she'd flip it into an accusation. I was being controlling. I was being insecure. Didn't I know Thai culture? Didn't I understand that women here valued their independence? I'd apologize, send flowers the next day, take her to a nice restaurant to prove I wasn't that guy, the suspicious foreign boyfriend who didn't understand. The sex changed too. In the beginning, it had felt intimate, connected, like we were learning each other. Now it felt mechanical when it happened at all. She'd be on her phone until the last minute, then turn to me with this obligatory smile. Afterward, she'd immediately get up and shower, like she needed to wash me off. But then, she'd have these moments of warmth that would pull me back in. She'd cook my favorite meal without being asked. She'd cuddle up next to me on the couch and say she was sorry for being distant, that she was just stressed about her family. She'd talk about our future again, about the cafe we'd open, about how lucky she was to have found me. I'd feel guilty all over again for doubting her. My freelance work was going fine, enough to cover our basic expenses, but the constant transfers to her family were draining my savings faster than I could replenish them. I started taking extra contracts, working longer hours, telling myself it was temporary. Once her grandmother recovered, once her brother finished this semester, once things stabilized, we'd be okay. One night, I came home early from a co-working space and found her on video chat, laughing in Thai with someone I couldn't see. When she noticed me, she immediately hung up, said it was her aunt. But her aunt didn't make her laugh like that, loose and flirty and young. Who was that really? I asked. Her face changed, went cold. She said if I was going to be like this, maybe she should just leave. Go back to her family. She didn't need a boyfriend who treated her like a criminal. I backed down. Of course I did. The thought of losing her, of being alone again in this city where I barely spoke the language and had no real friends, terrified me more than the possibility that something was wrong. That was September. By October, my savings were down to $18,000, and I was starting to have panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my chest tight, doing math in my head, calculating how long I could sustain this before I'd have to crawl back to Vancouver with nothing. Ploy started staying out entire nights. She'd text around midnight saying she was staying at her friend's place, too drunk to come home safely. I'd lie awake imagining scenarios, each one worse than the last, but too afraid to confront her. The few times I suggested maybe we should budget better, maybe her family needed to handle some things on their own, she'd cry. She'd say, I didn't understand how important family was in Thai culture, how selfish I was being, how disappointed she was that I was just like every other foreign man who pretended to care, but only wanted her for sex. And I'd crumble. Send another transfer. Apologize for being insensitive. Looking back, I can see how textbook it all was. The isolation, the guilt, the intermittent reinforcement of affection followed by withdrawal. But when you're in it, when you've invested so much money and emotion and identity into this thing being real, you can't see the pattern. You just see the person you love pulling away, and you'll do anything to pull them back. The collapse came on a Tuesday in late October. I'd been working late on a project deadline, barely sleeping, and I'd finally submitted everything around 2 in the morning. Ploy was asleep, or I thought she was asleep. I was exhausted, but wired, that specific kind of tired where your brain won't shut off. I made the mistake of opening my banking app. There was a transfer I didn't recognize. $8,000, USD, not Canadian. Sent 18 hours earlier to an account I'd never seen before. My hands started shaking. I checked my email, nothing. No confirmation, no two-factor authentication request, nothing. I checked my phone's security log. Someone had accessed my banking app at 4 in the afternoon, while I'd been at the co-working space. I looked at Ploy sleeping next to me. Her phone was charging on her nightstand, face up for once. The screen was locked, but I could see a notification. A message in Thai. I used Google Translate on my own phone to photograph and translate it. He finally noticed. You need to disappear before he makes trouble. I sat there for maybe an hour, just staring at the ceiling, feeling my reality reorganize itself. Every moment, every conversation, every touch replaying in my head with new context. The reluctance to introduce me to her family that I'd interpreted as shyness. The emergencies that always seemed to come right when I'd start questioning our spending. The way she'd trained me to associate my doubts with being a bad person. When the sun started coming up, I got out of bed quietly and packed a bag. Just essentials. I thought about confronting her, but what would be the point? She'd cry, or get angry, or both. She'd deny it or admit it, and either way I'd still be the idiot who let it happen. I left a note. Just 3 words, I know everything. I checked into a hotel near the airport and spent the next 2 days in a fog. I filed a police report, but the officer barely looked at me. Farang problems, his expression said. You came here for a girl, you paid for a girl, now you're surprised it cost money. I tried to track down her family in Isan using the address she'd given me. I hired a translator and we made calls. The village existed, but no one had heard of anyone named Ploy matching her description. No grandmother with a broken hip, no brother in school. On day 3, I did something I knew was stupid, but couldn't help myself. I went back to the go-go bar where we'd met. She was there, working, like nothing had happened. Same spot at the end of the bar, same bored expression, looking at her phone. But she was sitting close to a guy, European, maybe German or Dutch, 50s, balding, touching his arm the way she'd first touched mine, laughing at something he said, with that same musical laugh I'd thought was just for me. When she saw me standing there, our eyes met. I don't know what I expected. Shame maybe, guilt, fear, but there was nothing. Just a flicker of annoyance, like I was a previous customer who couldn't take a hint. She turned back to the German guy and whispered something. He looked at me, said something to her, and they both laughed. I left. Got extremely drunk at a tourist bar in Sukhumvit. Cried in front of strangers. Threw up in an alley. Called my sister at some ungodly hour Vancouver time, and told her she'd been right about everything. She bought me a ticket home for the next day. I've been back in Vancouver for 4 months now. I'm sleeping on my sister's couch because I can't afford first and last on a new place yet. I'm doing contract work, rebuilding my savings one invoice at a time. I'm seeing a therapist every Tuesday who specializes in financial abuse and romantic scams. Here's what I've learned, or what I'm trying to learn. I wasn't special. That's the hardest part to accept. One thought our connection was unique, that she saw something in me that was real. But I was just a type. Lonely foreign guy, recently bereaved, emotionally vulnerable, with enough savings to make it worthwhile. She'd probably done it dozens of times before me. She's probably doing it right now with that German guy or the next one after him. But here's the other thing, the thing my therapist keeps trying to get me to understand. Ploy played a role, yes. She lied and manipulated and stole. But I also chose to believe her. I chose to ignore red flags because the fantasy felt better than my reality. I chose to equate giving money with being loved because that felt simpler than actually building something real. I came to Thailand running from grief and loneliness. I thought I could buy my way into meaning, into mattering to someone, and when someone offered to sell me that feeling, I bought it. Again and again and again. I'm angry at her. Of course I am. But I'm also angry at myself, at the part of me that wanted to be the hero so badly. I didn't care if the damsel was actually in distress or just performing distress because she knew it worked. My dad used to say you can't cheat an honest man. I never understood what that meant until now. The con only works if you want something you know you shouldn't have, or you're trying to get something without putting in the actual work. I wanted love without vulnerability. I wanted connection without risk. I wanted to matter to someone without doing the hard work of mattering to myself first. Thailand didn't do this to me. Ploy didn't do this to me. I did this to me. She was just a mirror that showed me what I was willing to believe when I was desperate enough. Do I think about her? Yeah, more than I should. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if any of it was real, if she felt anything at all in those early days. My therapist says it doesn't matter, that trying to find the truth in a lie will drive you crazy. But I still wonder. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing it because I know I'm not the only one. I know there's some guy right now in Bangkok or Pattaya or Chiang Mai who's in month 2 of the same story, telling himself it's different, she's different, their love is real. And I know he won't listen to me or anyone else because I wouldn't have listened either. But maybe, when he's where I am now, broke and humiliated and starting over, he'll remember reading this and feel less alone. That's something, I guess. The money's gone. $40,000 that took me years to save, spent in 7 months on a fantasy. I can't get it back. I can't undo any of it. All I can do is learn to spot the pattern in myself, to recognize when I'm trying to purchase significance instead of earning it. I'm 29 in 3 weeks. I'm starting over from my sister's couch, but I'm starting over with my eyes open this time. That's worth more than $40,000. I think. So that's Marcus's story. And if you're watching this, thinking it could never happen to you, that you're too smart or too careful or too experienced, I want you to sit with that confidence for a second. Because Marcus thought the same thing. He was a software developer, a logical guy, someone who made his living spotting bugs in code. But he couldn't spot the con happening in his own life. This isn't really about Thailand. It's not about go-go bars or Thai women or any of that surface stuff. It's about what we do when we're vulnerable, the stories we tell ourselves, the ways we mistake transaction for connection. Ploy was running a business, a cruel business, an unethical business, but a business nonetheless. She identified lonely men with money and emotional wounds, and she gave them exactly what they thought they wanted: intimacy without complexity, love without the messy work of actually being known. And guys like Marcus paid for it. Not because they were stupid, but because they were human. If you're planning your own escape to Southeast Asia, ask yourself what you're really running from, because geography doesn't fix what's broken inside. A new country, a new relationship, a new start. None of it means anything if you're bringing the same unexamined wounds with you. And if you're already there, already in a relationship that requires constant financial support, that isolates you from other people, that makes you feel crazy for asking reasonable questions, I'm asking you to step back. Get some distance. Talk to someone who's not involved. Look at the patterns instead of the moments. Love shouldn't cost you your savings and your sanity. If it does, it's not love. It's something else wearing love's face. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever ignored red flags because you wanted something to be true? Have you ever confused generosity with affection? Let's talk about it. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this, more cautionary tales from people who learn the hard way. Marcus is rebuilding slowly, one day at a time. He's doing the work now that he should have done before he bought that first ticket to Bangkok. The work of figuring out who he is when he's not trying to be someone's hero. That's the real journey, not the one across the ocean, the one inside yourself. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.